In a frustrating loss for the Sun Devils football program versus Washington, there's some good and some bad, plus some takeaways that we're going to talk about on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, and of course, a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with that content, of course, by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. PrizePicks. There's a lot to digest from this Sun Devils game against Washington, and I've had some time to stew on it. My apologies for a late video, but better late than never. Let's go ahead and hop into it. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about the good. And there was quite a bit of good to take away from this game. There was a lot of things that went right for the Sun Devils. I mean, a 15-7 final score should paint that picture perfectly for you of how close the Sun Devils were to being able to pull off this upset over Washington. The first and most obvious thing is the defense. We talk about it every single week, but this was their best performance. By far, not even close. And not just the best performance of the season, one of the best performances the program has ever had. Yes, I did say that. One of the best defensive performances that the program has ever had. Seriously. You just went up against the number 5 team in the nation. You did not allow an offensive touchdown. Not a single point on offense was allowed in this game. You forced 4 turnovers over one of the best offenses in the country. You forced 3 turnovers off of one of the betting favorites for the Heisman Trophy, Michael Penix Jr. You did this on the road. You did this in a cold weather environment. It was surreal. Watching this game, you're sitting there and you're like, I can't believe we're doing this. I can't believe we're in this game. My score prediction was a 2-possession win for Washington. I think I said 42-27 final. That is absurd. That you kept them on offense to, 9 points? Something like that. That's insane. That is absolutely absurd to think about. Not only that, you had 1 turnover coming into this game. Forced not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 turnovers. 3 from Michael Penix. That's insane. You picked him off twice. Going into the game, he had thrown 3 interceptions all year. He threw 2 against you. Ro Torrance, Shamari Simmons were the culprits of those interceptions. It was phenomenal what they were able to do. The pass rush, they didn't get home for a sack, but they were able to punch a ball out of Michael Penix that was recovered by my dude CJ Fight. There was another fumble by wide receiver Jalen Polk that was recovered by Shamari Simmons. It was a great day. And they did a really good job snuffing everything out. Michael Penix Jr. threw for 275 yards, which is well below his average that he had per game. On the ground, they gave up 13 rushing yards on 13 carries. You completely shut down this offense. This offense that was averaging close to 500 yards per game had less than 300 total yards. Nobody, absolutely nobody saw that coming. The Sun Devils were totally dialed in on this game, and they outproduced them on offense. They had 341 total yards of offense. Trenton Bourguet had 196 yards passing, but he rushed for 145 yards on 31 carries, so almost 5 yards a pop to Carlos Brooks. In his return back, 10 carries, 63 yards. Cameron Scanaboo, 11 carries, 51 yards, and another touchdown. They were getting things done in so many different ways. They also were doing a really good job offensively, limiting a very good Washington defense. They didn't give up any sacks. They did have a turnover, which we'll talk about in the bad segment. Arizona State just went into this game with intentions of knocking Washington out of the playoff, and they were very close to really hurting Washington's chances moving forward. Like, Washington has not lost a football game since they played ASU in Tempe last year, and they were this close to losing once again. If you believe in moral victories, this is a big one. This is a huge one. But what they did in this game should give you so much enthusiasm. It should give you so much hope that you're going to be continuing to trend this way, and you're going to be continuing to be a football team that is going to give other very good programs a run for their money. Nobody saw this coming. They absolutely punked the Huskies. They punked them. Like, call it a trap game for sure. Absolutely definition of a trap game. But the Sun Devils looked like the better team. It wasn't just like they're keeping it close. It was, this is definitively right now in this game, this is the better football team. They did everything right defensively. The only thing they didn't get were sacks, and they were still getting pressures. They were still making Michael Penix uncomfortable. Penix was 60% completion, pretty far under what he's normally doing. He didn't have a touchdown pass. Rome Odunze, 5 catches, 82 yards. I'd say that's clamping him as best as you could. Jalen Polk, 9 catches, 102 yards. Good game for him. After that, I mean, they really limited just about everyone else. Giles Jackson, 3 for 16. Denzel Boston, 2 for 16. Jack Westover, 3 for 34. Obviously, he didn't have to go against Jalen McMillan, so that was good news. But it's definitely a team that should have been able to run over Arizona State, and they just weren't able to because of the way that Brian Ward was coaching these guys up. And then offensively, you've got the weapons. You've got guys that had really good games. You had Carlos Brooks. You had Cameron Scanaboo. Elijah Badger, 8 catches, 50 yards. It's not huge on paper, but, I mean, he still had a really good game. Like, this was through and through a very good performance for the Sun Devils. Defensively, it seriously is one of the best ever. I promise you. Maybe it's a hot take. I don't know. If you guys can think of other defensive performances, let me know. Obviously, the game against Nebraska, the 19-0, that is without a doubt the greatest defensive performance ever. Other than that, I mean, this has got to be up there. Top 5 at worst. They were outstanding in this game. They did everything that they possibly could to win this football game for the Sun Devils. Now, unfortunately, they did end up coming shy in this game, and we're going to discuss that a little bit more in just one moment. Before we get that far, though, I want to talk to you guys about our friends over at Athletic Brewing. Now is the time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by the Athletic Brewing Company. And much like to Carlos Brooks, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Talk about the Carlos Brooks coming back from an injury, and he goes out and he balls out. He's moving the chains, he's running hard, and he's one of the biggest difference makers that the Sun Devils have needed for their running game. Athletic Brewing Company, in the same way, has changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They're full of flavor, well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer, with over 50 different styles of craft, non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. They're always releasing limited time edition experimental styles to their variety as well. And the best part about a non-alcoholic beer is you don't have a hangover ever. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the promo code LOCKEDON and get 15% off of your online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions apply, and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. As well as that, you guys should be checking out the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday. We go live from 11 a.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live covers playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, and goes in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. I tune into it as well. Highly recommend. Let's get back into our conversation. Take a look at the bad from this game. It really starts with one play. One play that ended the game. Trenton Bourguet's pick six. It was not only untimely, it was the ultimate deciding factor in this game. Typically, when it comes to football, it's a small handful of plays that will decide what happens. And it feels like this was the play that decided this game. It felt like the entirety of this game came down to that pick six that Trenton Bourguet threw. Late in the game, fourth quarter, Sun Devils were well inside plus position to be able to get some points. And the moment that Bourguet threw that pick six, it felt over. I cannot remember a time where I felt so deflated watching a game. I went from all this hope and all this excitement and this feeling that anything was possible to looking at this game as one of the biggest disappointments that I can remember. You know, I've been watching sports for a long time. I've followed Valley sports. I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I've had my fair share of disappointments. Tough playoff losses, bad seasons, whatever. This loss sucked, man. It hurt. It hurt a lot. We shouldn't have been in that game, but we were. And at the end of the day, you can absolutely look at, you know, those moral victories. But I'm not a moral victory guy. And this game was so winnable. But it was a terrible decision. It was a forced pass, and you paid for it. And it ended the game ultimately. The other thing that we got to talk about, though, even besides that pick six, you got to talk about the play calling and the play selection. It was interesting. There were times where you liked what you were doing. You know, you were keeping Washington off balance. You were doing a great job in a run game. One of the worst rushing attacks in the Pac-12, which to me is a lot more to do with the injuries than it is the talent. Absolutely came alive. DeCarlos Brooks was a godsend for this run game. 10 carries, 63 yards. He was a beast. He got it done the same way that we saw him the first couple of weeks in the season. He looked just as good returning from injury. Cameron Scottaboo looked good. You kept him fresh, and he produced for you. 11 carries, 51 yards. He had the touchdown. The only offensive touchdown for either team in this game came courtesy of Cameron Scottaboo on a great drive. A great drive. They had terrific selection and were able to move the ball effectively. They did such a great job in that game. And they spread the ball out pretty well. Scottaboo, again, 3 catches, 25 yards. Badger, 8 catches, 50 yards. Nothing we're not used to seeing from him. Jalen Conyers had a handful of plays. 3 catches, 41 yards. Melquan Saval, 3 catches, 32 yards. They were able to just mix it up and get a little bit of everything going. But it also really just stalled out when you needed it to. Washington's defense is good, right? And Washington did a very good job of binding down when they needed to. They were a bend but don't break defense. And the best example of that was in the red zone. The Sun Devils had just the lone touchdown, but they could not do anything else. what's his name? Dario Longhetto, our kicker, 0 for 2 in the game on field goals. One of them was blocked. One of them was just terrible. After that, Arizona State truly just could not get much going. They weren't willing to kick field goals anymore. That's tough. That's really tough. Because if you make those 2 field goals, it is a 15-13 game, including that pick six. And there were other opportunities to kick field goals as well. But they didn't take those chances. And Kenny Dillingham said in his post-game conference that a big reason why they didn't was because of the lack of depth for the field goal teams. The special teams was just decimated with injuries. And I get it. I do. But we hear this every week. And I want to know if you guys feel the same, because I love these Sun Devils and I ride and die with these Sun Devils. And I ride and die with Kenny Dillingham. I don't know if I'm alone. I don't know if there's a lot of you out there. I'm getting sick of hearing it's a personnel problem. I am. Because at some point you need to start taking what's given to you. Arizona State is one of the most hyper-aggressive teams in college football when it comes to going forward on fourth down, when it comes to the very unorthodox play calling that they've been doing all year. They're up there. They are absolutely up there. And when it works, it's great. And when it doesn't, it sucks. But my problem with it lies in the fact of you got to be able to take the opportunities when they're there. And the Sun Devils are not doing that. They're so aggressive and they're leaving points on the board. Dario Longhetto has only attempted 9 field goals this year. 2 of them came in this game. He should have had more than that. He only has attempted 9 field goals. And I understand he's 6 of 9, but that looks so much worse because there's no volume. There's no amount of opportunities here for him. That's where it gets frustrating. That's when you sit here and you start questioning whether or not this is the right decisions that the Sun Devils are consistently making. You're leaving points on the board, and in a game that was as low scoring and as tight as it was, that's where you win and lose games. I want to talk to you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun that I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this season. You just select 2 or more players, pick over under on their projected stats, and then place your entry. It's really, really simple. Saquon Barkley rushing yards, Patrick Mahomes passing touchdowns, Josh Allen rushing touchdowns, Odell Beckham yards, Lamar Jackson rushing yards. There's so many different options with quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts too, like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. It's so much fun. I'm doing it all the time, and it makes daily fantasy sports so much more fun. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Thanks again for tuning in. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with takeaways. And I really only have 2. Just 2 takeaways this week. First one, the defense is elite, and they can single-handedly win you football games. They are that good of a unit. They are playing at such an absolutely insane level right now. And what they have managed to do against some of the best offenses in the Pac-12 has been surreal. You're talking about a defense that just limited the Washington Huskies team, the #5 Washington Huskies team, arguably the best team in the Pac-12. You just limited them to under 300 yards of offense. You limited them to 15 points. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable what you just accomplished against them. They are the 5th team against the pass. They are the 5th team against the run, and they are the 4th team in total yards per game. The only teams ahead of them are UCLA, Utah, and Oregon, and those are really good defenses, obviously. You're playing so well this year to the point where you can definitively win football games because of this defense. You just saw that. You just saw the capability to win a close football game against a very good team solely on your defense. They have been terrific. They've gotten after the passer. They have limited big plays. They're tackling very well. And now they're forcing turnovers. And if that's a continued trend, obviously it's one game with 4 turnovers. That's a great building block and stepping stone to be able to continue doing that. Hopefully that's the case. But you have to understand that the defense has been so good this year that you feel with the remaining schedule, Washington State, Oregon, Utah, U of A. I know that's not the order, but it's Washington State this week, Utah next week, and then closing with Oregon, U of A. Those are some really good offenses besides Utah, but neither here nor there. There should be, based off the defense, another win in there. I truly think that. I think that this defense can get another win. But on the flip side, the other takeaway, this offense is really bad. And this offense can single-handedly lose you games. Just like the defense can win, the offense can lose. This is the last team in the conference in total yards per game. They are the 10th team in rushing yards per game. They are the 6th team in passing yards. 7th team. 7th team in passing yards, but dead last in yards per game, dead last in points per game by a lot. 17 points per game. Second is Stanford with 21.3. It's abysmal how bad this offense has been. When you're not putting up points in one way or another, field goals, touchdowns, whatever, when you're not doing that, you're not winning football games. You're just not. It doesn't matter how good the defense is. Because where I told you I feel confident that there's one more game that we can win this year, I'm also very confident that there's not. I'm very confident there's not another win in here. That's because of how bad the offense has been. We need to call it as it is. Kenny Dillingham needs to start being okay with taking points when they're there. And I understand personnel issues are a real thing. But we need to start getting to a point, as Kenny has said many times, nobody cares about your circumstance. Nobody cares that you don't have the personnel. I promise you the fans are not going to have patience. I know because I have talked to fans. They don't have the patience for this. They're getting frustrated, and they have every right to be. They truly do. Everyone watching this video has every right to be. Everyone that's listening to this podcast has every right. This is an offense that is so stagnant that you're just going to lose so many football games. We've seen it this year. Shut out against Fresno State. Not able to put up points against Oklahoma State. Not able to put up points against Cal. Not able to put up points against a low-scoring Washington. There have been so many opportunities that have been missed for one reason or another. They got to start figuring it out. This is year 0 of a rebuild. The expectation shouldn't have been high. But with that being said, this needs to get better. The play calling, the execution, it's got to get figured out. There are some really, really bright spots here. Equally, there are some major flaws to this team. The defense can win you games by itself. The offense can lose you games by itself. What do you guys think of this game? What are your takeaways? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36 or the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. But as always, I thank you guys for tuning in. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter at RichieBrats36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. I will see you guys next time. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On.